Hello, I'm Chloe, and today I'm going to be talking about our paper Coevolutionary Learning of Neuromodulated Controllers for Multi-Stage and Gamified Tasks. And this work has been a collaboration between Aston University in the UK and the University of Oslo in Norway. So as computer science researchers, we're often inspired by things that we observe in nature, and this has led to the creation of things like swarm intelligence, evolutionary algorithms, and neural networks, for example. But an issue that both artificial and natural systems face is that they often find themselves situated in environments that are often dynamic, novel, and uncertain. And trying to design systems that can overcome the challenges that these types of environments present is really difficult. Neural networks in particular struggle in these types of environments because they suffer from something called catastrophic forgetting. And this is where, in order for them to learn something new, they have to rewrite or re-encode what's already encoded within the network, and this can lead to a loss of information and a degradation of performance. So how do animals overcome the issues when they find themselves in dynamic environments in nature? Well, one way that they overcome these things and adapt to environmental changes or novelty is to express plasticity. And this is where they can change their phenotype or their observable characteristics like their appearance or their behavior in order to adapt appropriately to the environment that they find themselves in. So animals can adapt to dynamic and uncertain environments by expressing plasticity, and we can therefore see whether plasticity helps neural networks and artificial agents to do the same thing as well. So the overarching question that we want to explore with this work is, can we design adaptive systems to express behavioral plasticity in artificial agents to help them achieve their goal in dynamic environments? So let's look into what plasticity is a little bit deeper and explore an example from nature. So the side-blotched lizard can be found in Southern California, and these lizards have been used to study plasticity in the natural world. And Southern California is host to a wide range of habitats for these types of lizards, including the Pisgah lava flow, which you can see in this image here. And it's a predominantly black coloured landscape. It's very, very dark in colour, and it's home to a population of these lizards. And over time, these lizards have actually been able to adapt their phenotype and their observable characteristics, in this case, their appearance, in order to be darker in colour. And this is so that they can camouflage themselves against their background in their surroundings, and they can therefore avoid predators when they're in this environment. Some way away off the lava flow, there's also another population of these lizards with the same genotype, but they live in a lighter coloured surrounding, and therefore they've adapted their appearance to be lighter in colour, so they're tan coloured or brown in colour instead of the black and the dark colour that you see with the Pisgah lava flow lizards. So this same species of lizard has been able to change its appearance depending on the colour of its habitat, depending on the environment that it's in. And the interesting thing here is that when these lizards are moved to opposite habitats, they can change their appearance again. So if a light-coloured lizard is put into the Pisgah lava flow habitat, they change their appearance to be darker so that they can camouflage. And the same happens in the reverse. So this is a phenotypic change. Their observable characteristics, in this case their appearance, changes depending on their environment. And this doesn't affect their genome or their genes. And this is a reversible change as well. So when we swap the lizard's habitats, they change their phenotype, they change their colouring, and that's an important part of plasticity. So these lizards show phenotypic plasticity because they can change their appearance to suit their surroundings. And this is reversible, which is an important quality of plasticity, as I've said. And this is a useful adaptation because they can avoid the predators in their respective environments, even when they change environments. So we're going to focus on a specific type of phenotypic plasticity called behavioural plasticity. And this is where behavioural changes can be made that are temporary and reversible. And this is in response to environmental stimuli. So if your environment changes, you can change your behaviour or the way that you look to suit those changes. And in nature, this type of plasticity can be achieved with neuromodulation, and this is a biological process that's found in animal brains, and it's where chemical signals can change or modify or regulate or gate the synaptic activity within the brain. And in nature, it's observed that the effects of neuromodulation are greater as environmental variability increases. So we hypothesize that as behavioral plasticity is beneficial for animals when they exist in dynamic environments in nature, that this will also help artificial agents to do the same thing as well, to achieve their goals in dynamic environments. We will therefore look at how agents can achieve their goals in environments that are of different environmental variabilities. So we'll set our experiments up accordingly. We also have a testbed to explore these concepts, and we use the river crossing dilemma, which is a 19 by 19 2D grid world environment with a river of water running down the middle of the testbed. And our agents' goals are pretty simple. What they have to do is they have to learn how to collect their two resources, their two allocated resources, one from either side of the river. So we've got our agents here, one in the top left, one in the bottom right, one's grey, one's black, and their allocated resources are the ones that are the same colour, so either grey or black in this instance. But there's a difficulty here because if the agent steps into the river, the agent's going to drown and receive a highly negative fitness. So they need to learn how to overcome that challenge, and they specifically need to learn how to build a bridge. And to do that, they need to learn how to pick up a stone, place it in the river, and there are two stones that are needed to build a bridge successfully. To add a little bit more complexity to this environment as well, it's also gamified, so there's an increasing cost for placing those stones in the river. So it's difficult to achieve their goal in the first place because they're going to incur some personal cost in order to achieve their goal. But one thing to note here though is that cooperation and competition can emerge because the agents may share the cost of building the bridge, or one might exploit the other, for example, but they can never intend to do that because they've got no awareness, they've got no knowledge of the existence of any other agents in the environment. So it can be an emergent property, but it's not intended. And because we want to explore environments with different environmental variability, we explore this environment as a multi-stage task. And we term it as a multi-stage task because first and foremost, the agents must learn to not go into the river at all because it's dangerous. Then, once they explore a little bit further, they can find out that the river is actually safe, but only in certain contexts. And this specific context is when it's carrying a stone. So it's multi-stage in the respect that the agents have to learn the same behavior, but in different contexts. We've also created a different version of this environment as well, with a less environmental variability. And we call this the protected river crossing dilemma. And this is a single stage task. So we changed the difficulty of the environment. It's a lot easier for the agents to solve. And what happens here is instead of the agents being to drown in the river actually acts as a wall. So the agents can't actually go into the river, they just bump up against it, and therefore they can't receive negative fitness. And they don't need to learn the initial thing of don't go into the river because it's bad. So this is why we call it a single stage task. There's less environmental variability and is an easier environment to achieve their goal in. And because we want to explore environments with different environmental variability, we want to see the effect that neuromodulation has in both of these cases, because this will help us achieve behavioral plasticity in our agents. So we'll set our experiments up to explore both single and multi-agent environments, and also single and multi-stage tasks in the river crossing dilemma and also the protected river crossing dilemma as well. So how are our agents designed then? Well, we have a combination of two different neural networks. The first is called the deliberative layer, and this will help the agent generate sub-goals about what it wants to do at that time step. And it takes in the current agent state and the state of the environment. So whether it's on grass, a resource, water, a stone, whether it's carrying a stone at that current moment, and whether a bridge partially exists in the environment somewhere at that point. And this gets processed and outputs certain sub-goals. So this will be a resource, stone, and water, and whether the agent wants to be attracted towards or wants to avoid or is neutral against these three objects. And our agents learn with neuroevolution. So we adapt and mutate these weights in the deliberative layer over time, over a number of generations, and that enables our agents to learn over a long period of time. So these sub-goals from the deliberative layer are passed on to the reactive layer, and this is another neural network which the agent uses to hill climb. So the reactive layer essentially determines what move the agent wants to take next in the next time step, depending on its sub-goals. So there's a visualization of this network in the bottom right-hand corner, and essentially the agent is able to hill climb and take the highest value cell until it reaches its sub-goal. So if it wants to be attracted towards a stone, for example, it can choose the highest value until it reaches that peak, and therefore it's achieved its sub-goal. Another thing to note is that the agents have no prior knowledge of the task or the environment as well. So they've got no knowledge, they're randomly initialized. Because we use neuroevolution, this is an evolutionary algorithm. So here are some of the parameters that we use in that algorithm. We have a population size of 25, and we run the experiments for 500,000 generations each. There's a tournament size of 3 agents at each generation, and we allow the agents to perform in the environment for 500 time steps. And for each experiment, we repeat it 100 times. So we have a set of 100 agents, and we repeat each experiment with this set of 100 agents. So let's have a quick look at what this looks like. This is a simulation of an agent that's learned for 500,000 generations in an environment on its own. So the agent will pick up a stone, put it in the river, pick up another one, and then go put it in the river to build a bridge, and then it will finally collect its resource. So you can see that on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side is a visualization of that hill climbing process. So what happens with the reactive layer is on the right-hand side. So it chooses the highest value. So the more intense the red is a higher value, and that's what the agent uses to navigate the environment and go towards its sub-goals and what objects it wants to be attracted towards in the environment. So how do we incorporate neuromodulation into our agents then? Well, other approaches have neuromodulation where they use a separate neural network or a separate cluster of neurons, but in our approach, we have neuromodulation within the one network, within the deliberative layer. So we have a combination of 2 different neuron types. We have our standard neurons, which are the ones that you find in every neural network. And we also introduce a modulatory neuron as well. So when positive activity comes into a modulatory neuron, it acts as normal. It acts as a standard neuron, and the activity comes out as normal. What happens with the modulatory neuron when the incoming signal is negative, however, is the outgoing signal is modulated, it's gated. So this is how we bring about behavioral changes that are both immediate and reversible, because we're not modifying the weights of the network, we're just changing the signal that's sent temporarily. So we can change the local synaptic activity and also reverse this as well. So this is where we get the immediate and reversible behavioral changes. So when the incoming activity to a modulatory neuron is negative, the outgoing signal is changed to be 0. So this will be multiplied with the connection weight, and obviously that will be a 0 onto the next layer of neurons as well. So this is how we change that behavior on a very local level, and it will switch back to normal when the incoming activity is positive. So let's dig into our experiments then. We have a set of 4 experiments which have different levels of environmental variability. So we have experiments that have both 1 and 2 agents within them, and we also explore this with our single stage and our multi-stage task as well. So when there are 2 agents in the environment, this increases the environmental variability because the actions of one agent in the environment will make the environment dynamic for the other one. So we would expect the variability in these environments to be a lot higher than ones where there is just one agent. So having a brief overview of these results, we can see that neuromodulation has a strong benefit in each of these 4 different experiments. And one thing to note is that the agents have a higher fitness generally when there are 2 agents in the environment, and this is because they can cooperate or exploit the other agent within the environment. So if they're incurring less of a cost from placing stones in the river, for example, if they're exploiting or they're cooperating with the other agent, then they can access a higher fitness than the agents that have to build the bridge themselves. So that's why the experiments on the right-hand side are a lot higher in fitness than the ones where there's just one agent in the environment. So let's look at the results of the single stage task experiments a little bit further. So we can see that neuromodulation has a clear benefit in both of these experiments. We can also see that when there's more environmental variability, i.e. when there are two agents in the environment, then the benefit of neuromodulation is greater. And that's what we hypothesized in the beginning. We can also see with the stats in the table in the bottom left-hand side that when there are 2 agents in the environment that use neuromodulation, 97% of these agents are able to achieve their goal, compared to just 61% of the agents that don't use neuromodulation. So that's a big increase in fitness and a big benefit to the agents when they do use neuromodulation. The results with the multi-stage task are comparable, but one thing to note here is because the task is a lot more difficult, because the agents have to learn that initial thing of don't go near the river because it's dangerous, and then relearn that in different contexts. The agents take a little bit longer in evolution to be able to achieve their goal and to be able to achieve a goal achieving fitness. We can also see that the benefit of neuromodulation increases when there are 2 agents in the environment as well. And this is what we saw with the single stage task as well. When we look at the stats, we can see that 2 agents that use neuromodulation in the multi-stage task, there's 94% of these agents that can achieve their goal, and there's only 68% of these agents that can achieve their goal without neuromodulation. So again, that's a big difference and a big benefit when the agents use neuromodulation. So we can see that when they can change their behavior temporarily, they can actually achieve a higher fitness, and more agents are actually able to achieve their goal. And that's the same in both of the experiments that we've seen so far. We've also conducted a 5th experiment as well, which increases the environmental variability further. So our previous experiments evolved the agents for 500,000 generations, either with 1 agent in the environment or with 2 agents in the environment. So the environmental setup stays the same throughout evolution. So we wanted to see what happens when the environmental variability changes halfway through the evolution, and whether agents are able to cope with that and how they do cope with that as well. So for this experiment, what we do is we evolve the agents alone for 500,000 generations, and then after 500,000 generations, we evolve them for another 500,000, but with an extra agent in that environment. So we change the environment to be from a 1-agent environment to a 2-agent environment halfway through, totaling 1 million generations. And we can see very, very clearly the effect of an increase in environmental variability. So when the agents switch from a 1-agent environment to a 2-agent environment, there's a big increase in fitness. And that's to do with what I explained before, where the agents can access a higher fitness from either cooperating or exploiting the other agent. We can also see that there's an increase in benefit when the agents use neuromodulation as well. The agents can succeed a lot more when they use neuromodulation, so much so that out of the 100 experiments that were conducted, only 1 agent in this environment actually failed to achieve its goal, compared to 27 agents that didn't use neuromodulation. So there's a big benefit. And we wanted to explore what happens in environments with different levels of variability. And we hypothesized that when there's more environmental variability, the effect of neuromodulation, the benefit of that is greater. And we can see that with this final experiment as well, where we've increased that environmental variability. So what are the implications of this work then? Well, the benefit of neuromodulation increases with environmental variability. That's an observation from nature, and we've also seen that in our experiments as well. So we've seen that when the agents exist in a multi-agent environment, the benefit of neuromodulation increases. And also when the agents are in an environment that changes the level of environmental variability halfway through, the effect of neuromodulation is more beneficial in that situation as well. So we've explored this with both a single stage and a multi-stage task, and also in environments where there are 1 and 2 agents as well, to explore different levels of environmental variability. But there are still a lot of questions that fall out of this work. So we want to see how neuromodulation actually does affect catastrophic forgetting, and whether it prevents or mitigates the effects of catastrophic forgetting. So this will be future work. We also want to look into what type of structures the agents evolve as well. So how many modulatory neurons the agents evolve, and what types of networks the successful agents actually do evolve. So the ultimate takeaway from this talk is that adaptive systems can benefit from both temporary and reversible behavioural changes, so that they can navigate and succeed in novel environments that are dynamic as a result of using neuromodulation. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions, you can always email us at the email addresses on screen. And yeah, thank you very much for listening. And that's the end of the presentation.